Me, brother? Sorry.
Sure, brother. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
இரவும் பகலும் பாராமல் எங்களை வழிநடத்தி வரும் இந்த தேவாதி தேவா ராஜாதிராஜா ஐயா இசப்பா, மற்றொரு நாளை இசப்பா, மற்றொரு புதன்கிழமையை எங்களுக்கு தந்து ஐயா இசப்பா உங்களுடைய எங்களுக்கு தந்த இந்த பொன்னான நேரத்திற்கு கைகொடான கூடிய நன்றி அப்பா. அப்பா இசப்பா, இன்று டேனியல் 6ஆம் அதிகாரம் இசப்பா நாங்கள் தியானிக்கும் பொழுது நீங்க எங்களோட கூட வாங்க ஐயா இசப்பா. டேனியல் இசப்பா துதி சோத்திரம் வந்த இசப்பா, சிங்கத்தின் குகையில் மாட்டிக்கொண்டு இசப்பா உங்களை துதித்தது போல ஐயா இசப்பா நாங்களும் உங்களுடைய வார்த்தைகளை துதிக்க ஆராதிக்க நன்றி செலுத்த நீங்க எங்களுக்கு கிருபை பாராட்ட செய்வீராகப்பா. அது மட்டுமின்றி ஐயா இசப்பா, இதுல இருக்கிற ஒவ்வொரு வார்த்தைகளும் எங்களுடைய இருதயத்தில் நல்லபடியா பசுமரத்தாணி போல் பதிய வைத்துக் கொண்டு அதன்படி ஐயா இசப்பா இந்த நேரத்துல இசப்பா நாங்கள் எங்களோட வாழ்க்கையில நடக்க கிருபை பாராட்ட செய்வீராக. டேனியலை போல இசப்பா ஃபெய்த்ஃபுல்லா நாங்கள் நடந்து கொள்ள ஆசீர்வதிப்பீராக. அது மட்டும் இசப்பா இந்த விசேஷமான நேரத்துல இன்று ஜாயின் ஆயிருக்கிற ஒவ்வொரு பிரதர்ஸ்க்காகவும் ஒவ்வொரு சிஸ்டர்ஸ்க்காகவும் இசப்பா அதிகமாக நான் ஸ்தோத்திரம் சொல்லிக்கிறேன். அது மட்டும் இசப்பா இப்ப ஜாயின் ஆக போகிற இசப்பா ஒவ்வொருவரும் இந்த ஜபத்துல அதிகமாக ஏறெடுக்கிறார். அது மட்டுமின்றி இசப்பா இந்த விசேஷமான நேரத்துல டிராவலிங் ஈடுபட்டு கொண்டிருக்க பிரதர் ஜோஷுவாக்காகவும் சிஸ்டர் ரூத்துக்காகவும் அதிகமாய் ஸ்தோத்திரம் சொல்லிக்கிறேன். அவர்களோட கூட இருங்க, வழி நடத்துங்க, பாதுகாத்துக் கொள்ளுங்க, ஆசீர்வதிங்க இசப்பா. ஸ்பெஷலா இசப்பா ஃபில் பிரதர்னால நீங்க எடுக்க கிருபை பாராட்ட செய்தமைக்காய் நன்றி ஆண்டவரே இசப்பா. அவருடைய கூட இருங்க, அவருக்கு பேசுற ஒவ்வொரு வார்த்தைகளும் நீங்க இசப்பா இசப்பா பரிசுத்த ஆவியால் நிரப்பி அவரை பேசும்படி நீங்க ஆசீர்வதிங்க. அது மட்டுமின்றி ஐயா இசப்பா எல்லாவற்றிலும் எல்லோரிலும் மேலானவரே இசப்பா, எங்களோட மைண்ட் எங்கேயும் வேவரிங் இல்லாதபடிக்கு இந்த காரியத்தை நாங்கள் இசப்பா அவர்கள் சொல்லிக் கொடுக்கும் பொழுது எல்லா காரியத்தையும் எங்களோட இருதயத்தில் பசுமரத்தாணி போல் பதிய வைத்துக் கொண்டு அதன்படி எங்கள் வாழ்க்கையில நடக்க கிருபை பாராட்ட செய்கிறாங்க. எல்லாவற்றிலும் எல்லோரிலும் மேலானவரே ஐயா இசப்பா, நீரே எங்களுக்கு ஸ்ட்ரென்த் தருகிற தேவனாய் இருக்கிறீர், வழிநடத்துகிற தேவனாய் இருக்கிறீர். எல்லாவற்றிலும் எல்லோரிலும் மேலானவரே உண்மை மட்டுமே நம்பி இந்த ஜபத்தை எடுக்கிறேன் ஜீவனுள்ள நல்ல பிதாவே, ஆமென்.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so today we'll start with Daniel chapter 6. And of course, Daniel chapter 6 is one of the famous chapters. And along with the creation and along with the flood, the Noah's Ark, I think these three are perhaps the most common stories that we hear even when we are in Sunday school. So I'm sure all the children, they know the story. But as we grow up in our faith, we see that these stories or these incidents that are written in the Bible, they also have deeper application for us. And there are things that we can learn even as mature Christians or growing Christians. There are important life lessons for us. So we'll go through chapter 6, kind of breaking it up this way, starting with verses 1 through 4, like a basic introduction. Then we see that there is a plot against Daniel and a decree that is issued by the king. And we see how Daniel responds to it and how he is accused and convicted and put in the Daniel's den, lion's den, and how he is delivered, and what happens after his deliverance is a new decree is issued. And we see that Daniel continues to prosper even in this kingdom, just like he prospered in Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. So Daniel continues to be successful even though he is in exile. So we'll start with verses 1 through 4, if someone can read, which gives us the opening, maybe verses 1 to 3, actually. So, yeah.
It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom and 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king sought to set him over the whole realm.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll come back to the first question a little bit later, but why do you think Daniel enjoyed such prominence? Even though at this point he's probably getting quite old, he's in his 70s or touching 80s. And even though he's a foreigner and he's actually a captive in a foreign country, why is it that he enjoys such prominence and such leadership?
It can be a couple of reasons, brother.
Sure. Yes.
One other thing is, like, in the present setup, I'm very sure that his testimony may be there even before this king.
Yeah.
With respect to that, he is a very wise man.
Mm-hmm.
And also that, like, other than what it is written about him with respect to the spirit,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think somewhere the way he would have put forth before the king, like it would be very beneficial there. That's how the testimony of this person, maybe Daniel, maybe
Yeah.
they would have realized.
Yeah. So it could be the spirit that is there, excellent spirit, and perhaps the based on historical data in terms of how he performed and how he has established his testimony over the years, which has carried forward. And when we think of Darius, there seems to be no clear information, either in the Bible or based on Bible scholars or historically or archaeologists and so on. So I don't want to spend too much time trying to figure out who Darius is, but these are some, we can say, hypotheses or some arguments that have been brought forth. One is simply that he was the king of Babylon, as we go from 531 that we ended last week, and he became the king, or he took the kingdom, it says. It doesn't say became the king, but it says he took the kingdom at age 62. And some also say that Darius is the other name for Ugbaru, who was responsible for conquering Babylon under King Cyrus. So a possibility is that King Cyrus appointed him to be a ruler or a governor for a short time before he took over. So that could be one. And the other possibility is that they both are the same person, but that would be inconsistent with what we read in 6:28, where it says that Daniel prospered under the reign of Darius and also in the reign of Cyrus the Persian, which seems to suggest that they are two different people. So there is no clear evidence or clear argument to say who he really was, but that should not distract us from the overall chapter that we are trying to learn and understand and apply to our lives. If anyone has any quick thoughts, we can take. If not, we can move on. Anything that insight on Darius besides any, obviously there is no conclusive statement, but if you have any additional insights, we can take that. Okay, so we see that Darius is at the top. Then he has 3 presidents, but later on in the verse, it says Daniel is appointed even higher. Then there are 120 princes. It seems like a decentralized structure, the way the kingdom is run. So it's not like Nebuchadnezzar, where all the power was concentrated with King Nebuchadnezzar, but this seems more like a democratic type of setup. And Daniel in verse 3, he's recognized for excellent spirit. And as we saw last week, he was also recognized for the knowledge that he had, the understanding that he had, and the way he interpreted the dreams. And that was the recommendation of Belshazzar's mother, who is the queen. She recommended Daniel when Belshazzar was looking for someone to interpret the writing on the wall. So we see that Daniel continues to get exalted under all the kings. So one could be simply that it is part of God's plan for his life. God had a plan to bring him to Babylon and exalt him in a foreign nation. And it could also be seen as a reward for his faithfulness to God. Right from the day he arrived at Babylon, he made a firm commitment that he was going to remain faithful to God. He was not going to partake in the king's table, or he's not going to partake in anything that is contrary to his faith. And that is consistent with what we read in Deuteronomy 28:13, where the Lord says, I will make you the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. if you will hearken to the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them. So this could be true in the case of Daniel. He knows the word, and he's also staying faithful to the word. And the Lord is, we can say that the Lord has rewarded him for his faithfulness. So the second part is where it picks up in terms of the plot that is put forth against Daniel and the decree that is issued by the king for 30 days. Yeah, maybe we can read verse 4 through 9.
Then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault. For as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king, and said thus unto him, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors, the princes, the counselors, and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree.
Okay, so we'll take a look at some questions here. What prompted Daniel's peers, or even people lower than him, which would be the princes, to plot against him? So what prompted them to get together and come up with some kind of scheme so that against Daniel?
Maybe he was appointed as the top presidents,
Yeah,
above the princes and other presidents.
yeah. So what happens at work when your peers get promoted?
Out of jealousy, right?
Jealousy, right? So yeah, so there is a jealousy, right? So they might think that he's just a foreigner and he's still in bondage, but the king is recognizing him and promoting him. So they might be feeling a bit insecure and also jealous that he's getting the position and recognition. And did they find any fault against Daniel?
No, brother.
Yeah. Had they found any fault, it would have been easy to bring him down from the position. They could have simply told the king that Daniel is corrupt, he is stealing money or whatever it is, and they could have brought him down. But in verse 4, it says Daniel was found to be faithful, and there was no error or fault found in him. So when we go to, so they come up with a plan. So what is the plan that they come up with? And what were they expecting to achieve?
I think they should not, people in the kingdom should not pray to anybody except the king for 30 days.
Yeah. So what is the, if you look at verse 7, what is the incorrect statement there when it says, it starts by saying all the presidents, the governors, the princes, the counselors, the captains, and so on, right? So what is not correct about that statement?
So they said either God or man. King is still a man.
Yeah. And they also say all the presidents, right? And obviously Daniel was one of the presidents.
Like, seeming like in Daniel is also included.
Yeah, so Daniel is not included, right? So there are only 3 presidents, and Daniel was not part of the scheme. Obviously, he was not part of the scheme. So what were they expecting to achieve by passing this decree for 30 days?
Maybe they knew that Daniel wouldn't stop praying to God, and
Find fault. Find fault.
Yeah, so they knew that Daniel will not compromise, and he will end up praying to God instead of the king, and they can put him in Daniel's den, and that would be the end of Daniel, and that would be then they'd have no reason to be jealous because he would be dead, right? So you cannot be jealous against people who are dead. So that would be the end. Yeah. Okay, so we can say there was jealousy. Maybe they hated Daniel for whatever reason, for his recognition that he enjoyed. And also, if others are getting promoted, it may bring up insecurity among the people. So that could be a reason. And that is consistent with what we read in 2 Timothy 3:12, that if we live a godly life, we shall suffer persecution. So when we take a stand for the Lord, the Bible is clear that you will suffer persecution either directly or indirectly. And that is what Daniel is going to face in the subsequent verses. He will take a stand for the Lord, and he will end up paying a price for it. But it says he was faithful, and there was no fault or error found in Daniel. And we also see a great statement in verse 5 that if they want to bring down Daniel, the only way they can do that is by concerning the law of his God. So that is the high character that Daniel had. He was faithful to his God. There was no error. And the only way we can bring it down is by appealing to the law of his God. So that naturally raises a question, how is our character? And God expects us to have a blameless character like Daniel. And in Luke 23:4, we find the same thing about Lord Jesus Christ. When Pilate was examining him, he said, I find no fault in this man. And the same way, Daniel is being examined by his peers, and they are saying that we find no fault in him. And so that's the kind of character. So we need to ask ourselves in the places that we work or in the communities that we live, will our peers find valid reasons to bring accusation against us? And obviously, if you're living a blameless life, they will not be able to use facts to bring accusation against us. And of course, they can use false statements, or they can use misleading statements to bring accusation. But as Christians, we should have a blameless testimony, and our conscience should be clear at all times. And we should be conscious that people who are around us, they're always watching us, and they might be looking for reasons to bring us down. And we should not give them any reason. Just like Daniel's peers, they were looking for a reason to bring him down. In the same way, people at work may be looking for opportunities. And more than that, we need to have a conscience that is clear before God. So we need to ask ourselves, will God find reasons to bring accusation against us in terms of any sin that is in our life? And that is why the psalmist writes, search me, O God, right? So that is a question, and that is a statement. Every time we take part in the table, we ask the Lord to examine ourselves in the light of God's word. So I feel that the success of the plot that they were coming with, it was a very crooked plot. It depended on two things, which is the Daniel's uncompromising character and strong convictions. So they knew that Daniel will not compromise or go back in his faithfulness to God. And they also knew that they could appeal to the king ego by saying that for 30 days, you will be like God, or you will have the highest position. So that's what they requested, that make a decree that whosoever shall ask petition of any god or man for 30 days shall be cast into the den of lions. And obviously the expected outcome is that Daniel will not compromise, and he'll end up breaking the decree. And if he breaks the decree, then he is sent to the den of lions. And in Genesis 3:5, that is the same temptation that Satan says, you will be like God. And when people tend to appeal to our pride, we oftentimes fall into that trap, fall into that temptation. It could be due to flattery, or it could be straight positions or praise. So we should be careful. And it says that the decree cannot be changed. which is obviously not true, because in the same chapter, we see that when we reach the end, the decree is changed in verse 26, which is very different from the decree that was originally made by the king, that they should make petitions to him and not to the God. Okay. And in verse 10, even though it's a very short verse, there is much we can learn, not only in terms of Daniel's response, but we also see a lot of things about Daniel's prayer life, which we can apply to our own life. Yeah, someone can read 10. Yeah.
Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime.
Yeah. So it is obvious what Daniel did, but what can we learn about Daniel's prayer life? What are some things that you can pick up based on verse 10?
Discipline, bhai.
Discipline, yes. He did it 3 times a day, so that shows discipline, yes. Yeah. Anything else?
Faithful.
Faithful, yeah.
I think the circumstances didn't affect Daniel. He was fervent in his prayer.
Yeah. So nothing really changed, right? So it says he
Yeah.
did as before. So as Brother said, he was faithful and nothing really could change his mind about his prayer life. The circumstances did not dictate that. So, yeah. Okay, so we see that Daniel is praying in his house, and later on it says he prayed in his chamber. So it seems to suggest that he had a private place for personal prayer, even though he was opening the windows and making it public. But looks like he had a designated place where he could go and spend time in prayer. And he also prayed on his knees, which shows that he had some reverence that he brought to his prayer time. And it also shows dependence on God, and that is why he's praying. And it also shows humility. And we see many examples in the scriptures. We've read from the book of Acts. Maybe you can read a couple of them. Luke 22:41, if someone can read.
And he was withdrawn from them, about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed.
So who's this referring to?
The Lord.
Jesus.
Lord Jesus himself, right? So he also kneeled, went on his knees and prayed. And in the book of Acts, we read about Paul. We can read that, maybe Acts 20 and verse 36, where Paul is meeting with the elders, and we see what he does.
And when he had thus spoken, he kneeled down and prayed with them all.
Yeah. Okay, so we see that kneeling down is a good thing to do when we are praying, and it shows a lot of things. And Jesus himself has set an example, and Paul, a great man of God, he also does the same thing. And he prays with his windows open to Jerusalem. And it is interesting when you read Solomon's prayer in 1 Kings chapter 8, there are many references to petitions being made towards the temple, and then the Lord will hear our prayers. And obviously we don't have to open our windows in the direction of Jerusalem or any direction. But it's just interesting that when Solomon did his prayer, you can read for yourself. There are many references where it says, maybe you can read one of them, 1 King chapter 8. Maybe you can just read 29 and 30. Just to... Okay, 1 King chapter 8, 29 and 30.
that thine eyes may be open toward this house night and day, even toward the place of which thou hast said, My name shall be there, that thou mayest hearken unto the prayer which thy servant shall make toward this place.
Yeah, so it's making a reference towards this place. And in the same way, if you read the other references, they also say the same thing. And here we see Daniel opening the windows to Jerusalem. And of course, at this point, the temple has been destroyed. But so maybe he's praying for the restoration of the temple, or maybe he's praying for the going back to Jerusalem. They came as in bondage, but maybe he's praying that they would be able to go back. And as you said, prayer was a discipline in his life. It was a priority. And he prays with thanksgiving, even though he knows what the circumstances are. He's praying almost in a hostile condition, where he knows that when he's praying, probably people are watching. And obviously they didn't have iPhones to take pictures, but they're going to go back and report that he's praying to God, which is obviously a dangerous thing. And this is what we see towards the end, where it says he prayed just like before. So there is no change in his spiritual life based on the circumstances that he faced. How about us? Does our prayer life change based on circumstances?
It does, but it shouldn't, brother.
Eh?
It does, but it shouldn't.
Yeah, it does, but it shouldn't, right? So if you are honest, I think it does change. Sometimes we are very tired, so we don't feel like praying. And sometimes we might be very discouraged and we don't feel like praying. So there might be lots of circumstances under which our spiritual life tends to fluctuate. It tends to go through ebbs and flows. But from Daniel, one thing we find is that he is very consistent right from chapter 1 in what he believes and what he practices. And oftentimes we know what we believe, but what we practice tends to be very volatile. It continues to change depending on our emotions and so on. But as brother said, that should not be the case. So in his prayer, we see thanksgiving. And in verse 11, we also see that there is supplication before his God. And in verses 11 through 17, we see that Daniel is accused and convicted. Someone can read 11 through 17.
Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, The thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Then answered they and said before the king that Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was so displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Then these men assembled unto the king and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is no degree, not statute which the king established may be changed. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel.
Yes, brother.
Sorry, brother?
Yeah, you can read, brother. Yes, till 7.
And cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. And a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and with the signet of his lots, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting, neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him.
Yeah,
then the king arose
be
very
good.
early in the morning
Brother,
and
that
went
should be
in
good.
haste unto the den of lions.
That should be good. Thanks. Okay, so this section is pretty self-explanatory. We see that Daniel is being accused of breaking the decree that was issued. And we also see King's reaction when he hears the news that Daniel has broken the decree. He is not excited. In fact, he feels that he has put himself in a trap, like he made a hasty decision. And because of that, Daniel is in trouble, and he wants to get him out if he can. And then King has a surprising parting comment that we see in verse 16. So we'll get to that, yeah. Okay, so when the accusers come to the king, they remind king of the decree. They re-emphasize that this is a decree that cannot be changed. And if he's going to change the decree, then it is not good, as it will bring down his credibility. So they remind him of that. So they accuse him of two things: that Daniel brought petition to his God 3 times a day, which is partially true. He brought supplications, but we read that Daniel also thanked God. And they also said Daniel does not respect the king. Why is that not true? Or is that true?
That
Not
is
true,
only
brother.
accusation.
I think except the accusation, there's no record that Daniel was disrespectful.
Disrespect.
Yeah. So he's not really disrespecting the king. He's disrespecting his policy or whatever, right? So he still might have respect for the king, but he's not willing to compromise on the decree, which is a policy or a decision that the king made. So you can respect someone and still not agree with everything they say, right? So obviously he is very upset that he passed the decree, and he wants to find ways to deliver Daniel. So it says that he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. So maybe he was looking for some loopholes to get him out, or maybe looking for ways in which he can come up with a different plan so that Daniel doesn't have to be punished. But when the time comes, we see that he honors the decree that he had signed, and Daniel is commanded and sent to the lion's den. And king tells him that thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. So here again, we see that Daniel's testimony comes across very bright. The king is able to recognize that Daniel is serving a different God, and he's very faithful in serving that God. So that shows his consistent life of devotion to God. And he also recognizes that the God that Daniel serves has the power to deliver Daniel. So we don't know how he got that knowledge that Daniel's God has the power to deliver. Daniel might have spoken to him, or he might have heard about the story of Nebuchadnezzar throwing 3 friends in the fire and how they were delivered. And Daniel is serving the same God, and he may expect the same result. So, but we don't see any mention of Daniel's friends. So what do you think happened to them? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah, we can only speculate, but so we don't want to speculate. It's possible they were not alive at that time, or we don't know. So question for us is, we also move around in circles. And of course, people in the church may know about your convictions. They may know about what you believe in. They may know about what you stand for. But when we go into the world and when we interact with different people, are they also aware of our godly convictions? And obviously the answer should be yes. People that we interact with on a personal level, who know us well, like our friends or our co-workers, our family members, they should know what we believe in and what is the strength of our convictions. And if they don't know, what could be the reason for that? if they don't know what type of convictions we have. If people at work don't know that you're a Christian, you believe in God and all that, what does that show?
We are not professing ourselves.
We're not professing our faith. Yeah, that's
Our faith,
definitely.
yep.
Yeah. And what is the reason for not doing that?
Maybe we are, I would not say shy.
Yeah.
Maybe if it can be afraid also, or it can be that you may think that they may not like you. I don't know what is the word for that.
Yeah, there could be, yeah. So we are definitely not professing our faith, and there could be many reasons for that.
Yeah.
We could be shy, or we may be afraid of the outcome, whatever that outcome could be, right? We may feel that our coworkers will start separating ourselves from different groups, or we may feel alienated if we say that we are fundamental Christians or whatever, right? So, but obviously that should not be the case, or it could also be the case that we don't have the burden to really profess our faith, which to be happening. But Daniel is reminding us again that when we are living in this world, our life should be consistent, and the same convictions that we bring to a Christian circle should also be visible to outsiders. Today, I wanted to wrap it up a little bit quick, and I wanted to take some time. I know Brother Sharad is here, so we wanted to take a few minutes just to get a quick update, and maybe few of us can spend some time praying with him before he leaves tomorrow. So today we'll wrap it up in a few minutes. If you have any final thoughts on the first 17 verses.
So one of the point which I thought, brother, which was mentioned here in verse 10, we were talking about the circumstances. Which didn't change Daniel. One of the circumstances which I feel, and it is written here actually, that he was past 80 years old. So that is also a weakness in the body, right? At that age, but he was going on his knees. So reverence, and I don't know, I don't know whether we can say fit or not. But like that is also a circumstances in yourself. It was not stopping him.
Yeah, that's a good point. So even though he's getting older, he's still maintaining that discipline. Yes.
And the other point, brother, which you said about number 7. About all the presidents of the kingdom, right? When I was reading it, I felt it as if the writer who is writing it, the way he has written it, basically he is laying the foundation of what is happening from previous verses, right? So like in our present, so the way he is mentioning it is like you understood what is happening, and the remaining all the presidents. So that's how I felt when I was reading it. So
I didn't recognize, like in verse 6 also says, right, these presidents. So it's very particular. You're right. Any other final thoughts on verse 1 through 17? Brother, we can stop the live YouTube, and I'll just request